Okay, it is 1 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order. It's meeting of California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board for Wednesday, March 16th, 2022. This meeting is being conducted via Zoom with several of us in Sacramento and others at various locations throughout the state. We'll begin our open session with a roll call of members. Let the minutes show that Chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves.
Present.
Member Eng.
Present.
Member Allen.
Present.
Member Kentamani.
Present.
Okay, please show all members being present. We now move to approval of the minutes from our last meeting, February 16, 2022. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I would so move.
Okay, it's been moved that we approve the minutes of February 16, 2022. We'll do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Reeves.
Aye.
Member Eng.
Aye.
Member Allen.
Aye.
Member Kentamani.
Aye.
And the chair is aye as well. So please show the minutes of February 16 being adopted unanimously. Moving now to item number 3 on our agenda, which is the chair's report. As I say every month, for those who are new to this, you'll see a relatively short meeting today, probably less than an hour in open session. We'll then be moving into closed session today. But please know that most of the board's work is done between meetings. And in fact, in the last month, my colleagues on the board have resolved nearly 500 cases on second level appeals. So they've been very busy. And at the same time, our administrative law judges in the field have resolved on a first level appeal thousands of cases. So we are working hard and we're getting through what has become a very heavy caseload. One item to mention to board members, the CEO Kutri and I met with Secretary Pelugia earlier this month. It was our quarterly meeting with her, and among many things that were discussed, we talked about our workload in both the field and at the board. And we were happy to be able to tell her that while the field was not able to meet DOL standards yet, Department of Labor standards yet, we were way ahead of many states in the country, and our average was way ahead of the average of states in the country. So given the circumstances of the pandemic and the increase in claims, PUA and others, we are doing better, far better actually than most states at the field level. At the board level, we're happy to tell the secretary that we were in fact exceeding all Department of Labor standards in terms of timeliness. And I think she was quite impressed. I think it's fair to say she was also very pleased that we keep statistics on all of this. And she seemed almost surprised because she's had other jobs in other states that we know as much about how we're doing as we do. And of course, the first step toward not only doing well, but continuously improving is to know how you're doing. And we do that. And I want to thank my colleagues on the board and our judges and staff in the field for doing such a good job of not just keeping up with the caseload, but record keeping so we know what we're keeping up with. With that, I will turn it over to other board members for their reports, moving first to Vice Chair Reeves. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. As we've moved to remote hearings in the COVID era, it has presented certain advantages to the participants and claimants. But one of the challenges has been in terms of technology, making sure that those hearings are properly recorded and all parties can be heard. And of course, with Microsoft's updates, we've run into a couple of glitches which have caused hearings not to be recorded or some parties not to be recorded. I want to thank Jefferson Willoughby, our Chief Information Officer, as well as Mike Kutri, for spending several hours this past month with me, walking through how we're identifying those situations and how we've corrected it. I also want to send a special thanks to Brandon Manji on our staff, who developed a patch in order to capture those opportunities when a hearing was not properly recorded, to flag that for the field office, ALJ, so that they could correct their recording system and make sure that that hearing was not lost, which of course would be a significant detriment to the claimant if the hearing's not properly recorded. So I want to thank Brandon for that help and thank Jefferson and Michael for their patience walking me through all the steps that they're taking to address this challenge. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Reeves. Moving on now to Member Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report this month.
Thank you, Mike. Moving to Member Allen.
Yes, no report other than, as usual, to express my profound thanks to all our staff at all levels, whether it's the administrative law judges, support staff, management. It does take a team. And I think that what was reported by the chair is exemplary of the fact that we work together very well, and we try so hard to get these cases right for the benefit of the people and the parties that come before us. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Moving now to Member Kent Money.
Thank you, Chair Block. No report, but just thanks to Vice Chair Reeves for sharing that update with us and the time that you spent looking into that. And also to Chief Kutry for keeping all of the board members updated on the audio issues throughout the last couple months. It seems as though we're moving in a positive direction with that. So thanks to everyone for the hard work.
Thank you, Laura. And that concludes our board members' reports, which is item number 4 on our agenda. We now move to item number 5, which is public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board?
Chair Block, I see no hands raised at this time. Oh, I have a hand raised. And okay, well, it was raised and it's no longer raised.
Okay,
So-
see,
No, it is-
Okay, we do have a hand raised.
okay. Whose hand is raised?
We have R. Miller.
Okay. Okay, let me briefly go over the ground rules for public comment. First of all, comments are no more than 5 minutes per person. Again, these are public comments, as the agenda says, not dialogue with the board or question and answers. Members of the public can make a statement for 5 minutes and then they are done. If there is anything that staff feels they need to follow up on, they will contact the member of the public after the board meeting, but there'll be no discussion during the board meeting. With that, I will ask Mr. Miller to go ahead and begin his 5 minutes of comment.
Good. Can you hear me, Judge?
We can.
Thank you. As you know, I've been here many times. Each time I have the same comments that I'm concerned. You've had numerous hirings that I've applied for every one of them. And throughout the last 3 years, I've been eligible, list eligible, as you can determine with the Cal Careers for reemployment as an ALJ2. I passed ALJ1 probation, passed ALJ2 probation. I also worked briefly for another agency. And throughout all the periods from 2009 through 2015, I received every merit salary adjustment with a favorable report. In the past, Judge Allen has stated his concern about how the CUIAB helped reemploy people, but I've never been reemployed. I've had my status changed. I've had numerous times when I could have been rehired. Mr. Silva in 2018 told the EDD not to address the 277 issue, which would have allowed me reemployment for my years of working with the CUIB, 5 years, and never had a reduced schedule. I worked a full-time schedule throughout that entire time. I've gone through my official records and found no black marks, and I've passed. I've got years of experience, not only as a judge with the CUIAB, but also with the states of California courts as a judge pro tem. I've also got an MBA. However, we also have a record of Judge Kutry stating that he did not want me to return under any circumstances. So when Mr. Allen said, why not? Judge Kutry simply said he had substantial performance issues. That's what he reported to Chief Block. But he didn't seem very interested in the details, according to Judge Kutry, about Michael Allen's inquiry. I've been a trial attorney. I've had lots and lots of remote hearings, administrative hearings, and actual courtroom trials. I looked always to notice an opportunity and the right to be heard and due process. Mine has been trampled by the CUIAB. I've not been given reemployment rights. My status has been changed. My list eligibility was changed after a job offer was nearly extended to me. And time after time, I've even asked to be a retired annuitant, to which Mr. Silva said, we reserve the right to consider only those who we file suitable, but he didn't ever confirm what suitable was. Mark Wu said, I'm not hired because of my performance at the CUIAB, but there's nothing in there that's negative about my performance, especially as an ALJ2. Judge Kutry has had an opportunity many times to speak with me about what he considered a major transgression, evidently, but he never has. He took personal property and never returned it. He said he doesn't have it. Mark Wu says he doesn't have it. However, it didn't disappear. So I feel there's an age discrimination going on that the board is not responding to. I see each of you as lawyers with professional responsibility, each of you as judges with professional responsibility, and board members with responsibility. And yet you seem to pay no attention, give Judge Kutry no guidance. You talk about personnel matters. However, this is a personnel matter. There's a current pending application for limited term. I've not heard back. I put in my application. I've tried to correspond with Mr. Silva. He just said the hiring is in progress. So I want you to really take a real look. I want you to be real judges, real lawyers, real responsible board members. And why do you think I keep coming back? It's because there's an injustice that I won't let go. It's not only a burr under my saddle, it's years of work for the agency, work that would provide employment for me and my family that have been denied for no good reason. Please look, please do your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Are there any other members of the public who wish to address the board? Seeing none, we will end public comment and move on to item number 6, which is report by our Chief Judge and Executive Director, Michael Kutry.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. Thank you, Chair Block. I will start with our workload and timeliness measures and discuss some other operational concerns since the last meeting. Our appeal volume from the Employment Development Department continues to grow steadily. However, it is still only a fraction of the peak which we experienced last May of 2021. I've been giving the board an update relative to the pre-pandemic level of March 2020. And this month we're at approximately 129% above that normal level that we experienced pre-pandemic. We continue to meet regularly with EDD to gauge their future workload. We are advised that there is still significant deferred workload at the EDD, which will result ultimately in a percentage of appeals coming our way. The executive staff continues to meet weekly and exchange information about the most efficient way to resolve our deferred workload and our backlog. And we continue to move work around to offices that are most able to expedite those cases. February marked the 11th month of the Department of Labor evaluation year. As in the vast majority of states, all timeliness measures in California continue to lag well behind DOL guidelines. February, however, was a bounce back month for the CUIAB after significant pandemic-related staff shortages in January. The field offices bounced back with a high level of production despite a shorter month, issuing over 25,000 decisions in February. We continue to utilize increased case assignments and team calendars wherever possible. As the 12th month of the evaluation year comes into focus, it is apparent that we will miss 30 and 45-day time lapse by a wide mark, as will the vast majority of states. On the bright side, the national average for case age is 155 days. It has remained very, very high. CUIAB's last reported case age last month for January was 101 days and has gone down again to 97.7 days. So we continue to focus on those oldest cases to give relief to those who are waiting the longest, and it is slowly but steadily working. I'm happy to report that after a very difficult January and February, we had no COVID closures after the last meeting in February. We've had one positive test, which did not result in a closure, a marked decrease from the earlier in the year. The statewide indoor mask mandate has been lifted for all of our jurisdictions. We still encourage caution in the workplace, but we are free from those restrictions finally after nearly 2 years. Unvaccinated employees continue in the state's weekly testing protocol, which began last September. We continue hiring and onboarding new judges. The next cohort of judges is scheduled to start on Friday, where we will introduce them to training, which will continue under the guidance of presiding Judge Bach. In an important matter that was raised by Vice Chair Reeves earlier in the meeting, since December, I've been updating the board on an issue we had with a small percentage of our cases regarding recording failure, where one or more parties was inaudible on the board's review of the recording. I'm pleased to report that the number of remands has returned to normal. So I again thank IT for its extensive efforts in focusing on the problem, identifying the problem, and fixing it. We are now back to sort of a baseline level of manual failures, which is about a handful out of 25,000 cases a month. And I think the increased scrutiny that this problem has brought has made our baseline even lower. And I thank the board for its immediate attention to this and its follow-up in letting us know what the frequency and type of the failures were. Without that, we would have been much slower in identifying and fixing the problem. I would like to conclude with security. There is no reportable event since the last meeting, which also gives me great pleasure to report. And finally, I would like to note that the June board meeting will be changed. The posted date is June 15th, and it will be moved to June 7th. And the formal posting on our website and the notice will reflect that change shortly. That is all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Move on to questions or comments for the executive director. Begin with Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Michael, for that report. All 11 of our offices in the field are experiencing unprecedented caseloads, but it's not evenly distributed between offices. Some are more buried than others. While they're all buried, questionably, some are deeper under than others. Can you expand a little bit about what you just, in your opening, you mentioned that you're moving resources around to address the areas of the highest backload. Can you just expand upon how you're doing that a little bit?
Absolutely. So every Monday, we take a snapshot of our workload in every office. And it enables us to very quickly identify those offices that are receiving more work, they're not able to keep up with it, and the relative staffing levels of all the offices. So we make a decision every Monday evening whether a merited transfer of work should occur. This is guided by a lot of issues. One is the ability to recruit to certain jurisdictions. Some are easier than others to staff up on. And then other jurisdictions from the EDD transmit more appeals regionally. So it's a constantly moving target, but we will make an evaluation each Monday as to whether, for example, 500 cases should be moved, whether no cases should be moved, but we're trying to equalize the amount of time the parties are waiting statewide.
Okay. And because now we're doing on-phone hearings, does that give you the flexibility to take a judge maybe in Fresno to do a hearing for a claimant in San Francisco?
Because we're still dealing with paper files, we have to move
Okay.
the files to the different locations.
It's not that simple. Okay.
But we've been doing it for many years and we're quite good at it. It just takes an extra couple of days.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on now to Member Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Kutry, thank you again for your work in between our meetings. If you may recall, last meeting, I referenced the fact that claimants have a barrage of regulations and paperwork to deal with, and there was a concern that claimants that actually could have applied for pandemic benefits actually applied for UI or some other benefits. And at the end of that long process, were found ineligible for UI. Could you explain whether EDD has some mechanism for automatically enrolling applicants that might have a potential double claim or pandemic claim but don't apply for it? Or are they only doing that when instructed to do so by a board decision?
No, they had an automated internal process. When a party is found ineligible for unemployment insurance, DOL guidance requires them to establish or attempt to establish eligibility under the PUA program. So we have asked the department to follow up on several of our cases to make sure that that pattern is demonstrated in recent board decisions. I don't have the update yet for you, but I will.
Okay. And I think there was an assumption that October the 6th was the last day to apply. I believe in an earlier conversation, you referenced the fact that certain benefits are going to continue beyond what we thought was the cutoff date. Can you explain that if that is the case?
Yeah, so the PUA program, the last date to file a valid PUA claim was the week of October 6th or thereabouts. But that does not mean that additional adjudication of those claims will result in a denial. It's just the deadline for filing of the claim. So there are still funds payable to those parties who are adjudicated eligible, either by the department or at the CUIAB level.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My final question is regarding the number of claimants that have whose cases had to be remanded due to the bad audio. I'm glad to see that it is going down, and my personal anecdotal experience is that it is. Are we keeping track of those claimants that may not necessarily respond to the remand, either because they thought the case is over or for whatever reason? And do we know if there are claimants that are falling through the cracks that are not responding? And if so, are we doing anything about that?
Yes, we're tracking every single case for rehearing to establish that a party appears. And if we have any notice issues, then the party is contacted immediately and notified to appear. So far, there have been very few parties who have not responded to the subsequent notice, and those are being prioritized. So we will be sure that every party on that list is contacted for rehearing. And then, if some choose not to appear, we'll make sure we have a record of that as well. But by and large, they're being reheard.
Okay, I'm glad the number of no-shows or non-responses is a small number. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Moving now to Member Allen.
Yes, Chief Judge Kutry, I really just have one question with your report. You mentioned our training cohort of new judges. How many are we talking about? And are they all at the ALJ2 level, or is it a mix?
They are ALJ1s, and I believe, and Mr. Silva can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have 8 starting on Friday.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you, Mike. Moving to Member Kent Money.
Thank you, Chair Block. Thank you, Chief Kutry. I just had one question to follow up on what Vice Chair Reeves was discussing with you. And I wondered if you could just briefly touch on the appeals modernization project and how that in the future will enhance our ability to shift workload, because I think that would just be a nice thing to focus on with all the workload shifting struggles with paper files.
Absolutely. CIO Willoughby is going to give you a status update on the project itself, but I can tell you that one of the key features of this project is that we will be able to move a case from one jurisdiction to another, essentially at the push of a button. So a judge in Southern California can access a Northern California judge's case and hear it immediately. It will be a fully digital process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was my only question.
Thank you, Laura. If there are no further questions for Chief Judge Kutry, we will move on to item number 7 on our agenda, which is a report by presiding ALJ for appellate operations, Jody Remke. Jody.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. As in every month, I'm going to go over the DLL guidelines and standards. And as mentioned earlier, the board still stays above the national average, meeting the standard in both the 45-day and 75-day goals. For cases resolved in 45 days or less, the goal is 50%. And for the February, the board was at 88.8, and the yearly average is 81.6. For 75 days or less, again, the goal being 80% or more of the cases, we were at 94.2 for February and 94.1 for the year. So I believe I'm going to go out on a limb and say it would be statistically impossible for us not to meet the required annual average. But, you know, of course, I'll be wrong. So as you know, March statistics will be the last for that, but we are looking strong in both categories. Case aging, as of February when this was run, we are at 29.9, again, the standard being 40 days or less. So again, we're doing well in all areas. I would just note one minor change that we're starting to see, which is in our balance of open cases. It did increase slightly since last month, but I'm working with Chief Coutry and we are reviewing our staffing and resources to make sure we're on top of that if that trend continues, so that we don't start to drop in our other numbers.
Thank you, Jody. Are there any questions or comments for Chief Presiding ALJ Remke? We'll begin with my Vice Chair, Dan Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Jody, for that presentation. I just want to confirm that the DOL evaluation period is up at the end of this month, 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
All right, so we're doing very well, at least in terms of the appeals. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Moving now to Member Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Judge Remke, I just had a question about the UI workload composition on the monthly report. Do you anticipate when the PUA UI appeals will go down to almost nothing in the percentages?
Yeah, I guess we'll just continue to monitor how it's doing in the field, because, you know, our cases are just a % of what the field is seeing. And you can see in the field, those numbers have gone all the way down to 30% of their overall workload. So as that number continues to drop, so will ours. I mean, currently for February, we had only 21% of our cases dealing with PUA, which is a significant decline from earlier in the year. So again, I can't give you an exact date. I think we'll just see each month a continued decline.
Yeah, I'm breaking out all my older folders for the standard UI cases, because we've spent a lot of good time evaluating the pandemic cases, and for good reason. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Member Allen.
Judge Remke, I salute you for your declaration of impossibility. I've always shied away from that word, as well as implausibility, but thank you. Judge Remke, and maybe Judge Coutry could be helpful on this as well. When we get done with the full 12 months of our caseload and evaluation, what is the process in with the feds, with the DOL, and how long does that go on, and what do they look at?
I'm going to kick that to Chief Coutry, who probably deals more directly with the audits and when that occurs.
Sure. We have a process whereby we compile all of the yearly statistics. We deposit them to DOL. Actually, EDD largely does that with us and for us. And then there's an evaluation period, and DOL may have questions about the integrity of the data or want us to drill down into certain parts of the data, which we will happily do. And then at that point, they'll finalize our data and the nationwide data, which is published on the DOL website. If there are issues, there will be nationwide with timeliness. It remains to be seen whether there's going to be corrective action efforts that are imposed on nearly all of the states in the country, or whether there will be some pause in that, recognizing the justification for the workload. But we will keep you apprised of whatever messaging comes from DOL in that regard.
Okay, thank you both for the information. No further
Thank you,
questions.
Michael. Member Ken Monty.
Thank you, Chair Block. No questions, just thank you, PJ Remke, to you and everyone at AO. It looks as though we are in good shape for meeting the guidelines. So good work to everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Notwithstanding PJ Remke's confidence that we could basically do nothing for the rest of the month and still.
No,
meet the
I didn't
goal.
say that.
We're going to bring it past the goal line, so we'll be the top board in the nation for case finishing and case timeliness. With that, we move to item number 8 on our agenda, report by our CIO, Chief Information Officer, Jeff Willoughby. Jefferson.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair Block and members of the board. I'll start with a modernization update this month. Our subject matter experts and test groups have been working really hard to exercise our new system from beginning to end in anticipation of the vendor's delivery of our case management system. Many efforts are underway to prepare both systems and workforce, including development of training for our office staff and ALJs. Other activities include data migration scenarios, knowledge transfer from our vendor to us, and technical training for the IT staff who are going to be supporting the system going forward. We touched on the next item that I have, as did Chief Judge Kutry. We've been working with administrative and technical teams at the Employment Development Department on ways to streamline our exchange of case information. We mentioned the paper that we need to exchange between offices and to manage workload. I'm very pleased to report that we will begin piloting electronic document delivery for unemployment insurance cases next week. And if that proves successful, we'll move to accept all of those transmittals starting on April 8th. So this effort dovetails nicely with our modernization effort, work underway at PD for their modernization effort, and paves the way for us to substantially reduce the paper that we handle overall. I'll update the board on this effort status at our next meeting, and I anticipate that report based on our testing thus far to be positive. So it's a very exciting step for us to be able to get our transmittals electronically. And then in closing, I'd like to thank our Information Security Officer, Sonia Teamer, for presenting last month's report. She did a great job and is always looking for ways to educate us about the importance of security as a habit and one that we should all embrace. And also, I'd like to thank Vice Chair Reeves for diving into the weeds with us to go through some of the technical parts of and understanding the cause and effect regarding these audio systems and how we record hearings and the work that we've done to mitigate those issues. And I truly appreciate his recognition of our staff in that respect. So thank you very much. That concludes my report for this month.
Okay, thank you, Jefferson. With that, we'll have questions or comments for CIO Willoughby, beginning with Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Jefferson, for the presentation and for your patience with me. Yeah, as you know, I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I'm sure it was frustrating walking me through all the steps you were taking to make sure that the hearings are being properly recorded. I do have one question, and it's a follow-up to an email that our Security Information Officer sent out. There has been lots of talk about potential retribution from the Putin regime regarding American sanctions and whatnot. And I know that there are utilities who are taking special precautions, and I know that state governments and local governments are taking extra precautions. I don't want to ask for any specific strategies or tactics, but can you perhaps inform us as to the seriousness in which this board is taking these, I would say, potential risks in the coming weeks and months?
I think I alluded to it briefly in terms of security being a habit in my report, and we don't talk about very specific security elements in this form. However, we do have systems in place that help us identify if activity that is unusual is happening anywhere inside our systems or our network, if you will. So we have those, as well as a security operations center at the California Department of Technology. That is a major filter for many of those vectors of attack. So we have multiple ways of protecting, assessing, and defending against those attacks from foreign nationals. And at this point, I can only say to the folks who are on staff or who may be listening, if anything seems unusual, continue to report it to the Information Security Office, and we will evaluate and make sure that it's safe to consume.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Member Eng.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chief Block, Chair Block. Jefferson, I wanted to echo your gratitude to Vice Chair Reeves for pursuing the how it all happened issue with the bad audio, and as well as his commendation of you and your office. I think this is something that really dovetail with our mission to treat claimants with great respect and to value the time that they have to spend to go through a hearing just to get to the hearing process, and then to have it remanded and realize that perhaps the information that they rendered was had to be done all over again. So I really appreciate that, and glad to see that we have a handle on it. I personally have seen the numbers go down as well. So my question for you is kudos on the appeals modernization project. I wanted to know, there's a question I asked at the last meeting. Will there be training for the board members so that we can see what all the other parties are going through, as well as to get acquainted ourselves? I guess, should we decide to apply? I'm just kidding. But can you detail when and if that training would occur and what it would involve?
Sure. So board training is certainly slated to be part of the product rollout. It is likely to be a phase so that we manage the staff in their sort of operational elements. So we will go from the front end of the process to the back end of the process. You'll see more communication coming out in the next week or two on how we plan to slate that out, including other news about the project that we release internally.
So you do have board training in mind?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Not asking for more work, but I certainly would appreciate. I've followed all the updates and really appreciate the work that's been done as we move toward the quote end. Thank you. No further questions, Chair Block.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Member Allen.
Thank you, Chair Block. And I do want to thank Vice Chair Reeves for going into the weeds, and also want to thank him for his mention of the Luddite movement at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I appreciate that. I relate to them with my computers and hardware that I have to work with. So, to me, the only thing I would say, Jefferson, is I'm really pleased with the progress we're making in all these different areas, and also for your personal attention to my issues with my laptop being antiquated. Apparently, I only have the only laptop that is operated by Treadle, where I power it, and I'm really glad that I'm getting a new one, and I'll be working with IT for the changeover. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to Member Ken Money.
Thank you, Chair Block. No questions, just appreciate you, Chief Willoughby, and your team, and the continued hard work on the appeals modernization project for everyone involved. Looking forward to when we are all trained on that and using it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Jefferson, for that report. Moving on to item number 9, which is a report by Rob Silva, our Chief Administrative Officer.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and board members. Thank you. I have a brief report today, beginning with an update on the call letter budget request that I touched upon at last board meeting. On February 24th, the budget requests for the coming state fiscal year 22-23 from the 18 CUIAB cost centers were submitted to administrative services. We have consolidated all of the staffing and equipment requests, and we'll use them to start building the 2022-23 fiscal budget. We have experienced some savings in operating expenses over the first half of the current fiscal year. So after consolidation of the OE&E requests, I met with Chief Coutry and Assistant Director Pertol to vet some of the smaller ticket equipment and furniture requests from each branch for consideration to purchase in the current budget cycle. We identified a number of items that could be moved forward, and in admin, we're currently in the process of completing the purchase order requests for submission before the fiscal year purchase cutoff, which is April 20th. Cutting to hiring, Chief Coutry mentioned that we have 8 ALJs scheduled to start this week's cohort training. After there were 8 scheduled, but my records show that subsequent to that, 2 had decided to delay their start date. So again, my records show that we have 6 now starting this Friday, with another 3 already accepting an offer of employment to begin the April training. So in addition to that total of 9, we also have 2 more for which we have just received name approval to hire. Skipping to the support staff side of things, we've only had 2 new employees come aboard since last month's board meeting. We have had a couple of separations since last month and a couple of promotions as well. So there continues to be a flurry of activity with regard to support recruitment. We currently have 18 positions pending in 5 different classifications across field operations, 4 of which were added just this week. Of this 18, only 3 of them had final filing dates occurring last month. So as I reported last month, offices continue to stay fairly current with their hiring processes while simultaneously addressing the high workload. I'll cut to COVID-19. Shortly after the last board meeting, Santa Clara County, Los Angeles County, and the city of Pasadena's public health departments joined the state's public health department in lifting the indoor masking mandate. So as Chief Coutry mentioned, as of March 4th, all CUIAB employees are no longer required to wear masks while in the workplace. He also mentioned that we only had 1 COVID case since the last board meeting, and that has continued with the supplemental paid sick leave trend as well. As I reported at last board meeting, we were going to develop request and approval process and program our time reporting system so that employees could request this COVID-related supplemental paid sick leave that became available through Senate Bill 114. So that's all been done, and we announced its availability to employees on March 7th. As I mentioned, very few SPSL requests have come through this month. There just haven't been a lot of people with illnesses or child care closures, which is an excellent trend to report. So what we've done over the last week or so is focus on the retroactive part of that bill. So we want to ensure that the leave benefit gets accurately applied to back to January 1st for all the employees that sorely needed it over the first couple of months of 2022. Those requests have been pouring in, and we're approving them as quickly as we can so that those employees' leave balances can get corrected quickly. And that is my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Questions or comments for Administrative Services Officer Silva? We'll begin with Vice Chair Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Rob, for that presentation. It's very good news on the COVID front. I was wondering, this might be a question for Mike Coutry, but of the 6 ALJs starting next week and the 3 others starting in April, can you tell me where they're going to be posted around the state? Can you break it down for me? Is that available?
It is available. I could look it up if you want to delay, or I could send it offline. It's entirely up to you.
You can email it to me after the hearing. It's fine. I'm just
I-
curious, where our resources are going.
Certainly.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dan. Moving now to member Amy.
Thank you, Chair Block. Chief Silva, thanks always for your report and the work that's been done between meetings. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe at the last board meeting, you had reported that in the 4-week period prior to the last board meeting, there were in excess almost 24 positive cases. And that's gone down to just 1 in the last 4 weeks.
That is correct.
That is amazing. Congratulations. And to what do you attribute that?
Our department is following sort of the state and federal trend of warmer weather and people getting beyond this cold season. I've seen statewide from other departments, I mean, not such a dramatic drop as we've had, but a similar drop in reported cases.
Well, my commendation to everyone that's participated in our COVID programs to lessen the severity. That is absolutely stunning to go from, was it 22 to 1? Congratulations to everyone. Thank you. I've got no further questions. That raises the law order. It speaks for itself.
Member Allen.
Yes. Good afternoon, Rob. If you might have this information on hand, or maybe you don't. So you can always email it to me and to other board members. But I do a lot of reading regarding what's happening with the workforce, and most of us are familiar with what's called the great retirement, or the great walk away from work that's occurred over the COVID era, this last 2 years. I was just wondering about our attrition rate for our agency as a whole, and as to whether there are specific hotspots where we've had more attrition than others, and how we compare to other state agencies in terms of attrition.
For the first piece of your request, I will be able to easily gather our internal attrition rate data and forward it to the board members. With regard to how it compares to other departments, that'll take me a little bit more time, but I'm happy to forward that to the board members when I get that data.
Thank you. It's always a good early warning system if there's something going on that we should maybe attend to. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Moving on to member Kent Monning.
Thank you, Chair Block. Thank you, Chief Silva. No question, just want to comment what a difference a month makes. And this is a much nicer update for everybody. And it's really good to hear. And thank you for your continued hard work. I appreciate it, and the good report. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Rob, for that report. That was our 9th and final open session item. We are moving to a closed session today. Is there anything else for open session that anyone has? Seeing no response, I want to remind you that we have a separate code to call into closed session that is not open to the public, so members of the public will not have that number. I'll suggest we take about a 5-minute break. It is 1:48 right now. Let's make it a 7-minute break until 1:55. And if we can promptly get back online at 5 minutes to 2 to begin our closed session. With that, we will recess into closed session beginning in 7 minutes. Thank you.
Jeff, I've confirmed that the closed session is operating as intended. Just heads up.
confirm that.
Okay, we have concluded our closed session with no reportable action. The open session is now reconvened. And since there are no other open session items for this meeting, we will now adjourn. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair Block.